I am 74 years old now. My hands shake a little, but the memory of that night is still as clear as the desert sky. I had no man. I had no money. I only had 6 children, and a promise made to God when I thought I wouldn't survive. If you are hearing my voice right now, perhaps you are going through a time when everything feels too heavy. Before we continue, I ask you something simple. Subscribe to this channel. These stories exist to remind us that no one walks alone. Now, let an old woman from the Old West tell you what it was like to live when there was nothing but faith. I was only 29 years old when I buried my husband. There was no beautiful speech. There was no music. Only dry earth. And 6 children holding onto my skirt. That morning, when I returned home, I realized something I will never forget. Silence weighs more when there is no man to break it. The ranch seemed larger, the walls colder, and the future a terrifying place. 6 children. The oldest was 9, the youngest still in my arms. I didn't know how to plant enough. I didn't know how to negotiate like he did. I didn't know how to protect all of them from the cruel world outside. But they looked at me as if I knew everything. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat on the kitchen floor and cried like I had never cried before. I didn't ask for wealth. I didn't ask for comfort. I only asked for the strength not to give up. Hunger does not wait for explanations. It does not understand grief or promises or good intentions. I saw my children sharing a piece of bread in silence, trying to pretend they weren't hungry so they wouldn't hurt me. It broke my heart. There were days when I pretended I had already eaten. I said I wasn't hungry, but the truth is, I just wanted them to survive. At night, when the wind howled outside, I wondered if I had made a mistake by staying alive. But then, I would look at them sleeping, and something inside me said, "You are still needed." It was in the cold hours before dawn that I made the promise. I was kneeling by the bed, with trembling hands and a tired heart. I said, "God, if you sustain us, I will raise these children to honor you, even if I never have anything." I didn't ask for things to be easy. I only asked for direction. In that moment, something changed in me. Not in the world. In me. I stood up from that floor a different person than the one who had knelt down. After that promise, life didn't get easier. It got clearer. I would wake up before the sun rose. It was still dark when I put on my simple dress, pinned up my hair, and began the day. There was no time for grieving. I washed clothes for families in town. I scrubbed those pieces until my fingers were cracked and bleeding. Sometimes, the water was so cold it felt like it was cutting my skin. I sewed at night by a dim lamp, while the children slept crowded in the same room. Every stitch was a silent prayer. Every breath, a plea for strength for the next day. I never let my children see the weight I carried. They needed to see a steady mother, not a broken woman. There were days when payment came in coins. Others, in a sack of flour. Sometimes, only in a "God bless you." And I accepted it all with gratitude. I learned early on that dignity does not come from how much you have, but from how much you are able to keep going even when no one is watching. In those days, no one applauded me. No one called me strong. But I knew God was watching, and that was enough. Not all faith is made of courage. Some nights are made of exhaustion. There were late nights when I sat on the edge of the bed and thought, "I'm not going to make it." The children slept, and I cried in silence, afraid even of the sound of my own tears. There were illnesses, high fevers, days when I had to choose between buying medicine or food. Those choices leave marks that time does not erase. I wondered if God still remembered me, if that promise had been heard, or if it had been lost in the desert wind. But even when my faith was small, I kept praying. Sometimes, my prayers were just a short phrase, "Help me get through this night." And every night passed. Not always with clear answers. Not always with immediate relief. But they passed. I learned that giving up is easy when we are tired. What's hard is continuing when the heart is empty. And it was there, in those dark moments, that my faith stopped being words and became endurance. I couldn't promise my children a comfortable tomorrow. I couldn't guarantee expensive schooling or new clothes. But I could promise presence. I taught my children to work early, not out of harshness, but out of necessity. I taught them to share. I taught them to respect. I taught them to pray before bed, even when the day had been cruel. At the simple table, I would say, "We may not have everything we want, but we have everything we need today." They grew up hearing that. I never complained about life in front of them. I never spoke ill of the father who was gone. I never cursed fate. I wanted them to grow up strong on the inside. And they did. Not because they had it easy, but because they learned to face life. Today, looking back, I see that scarcity was the school that formed their character. Nothing prepares a mother to see her children leave. One by one, they left the house. Some to work, others to start families. The house grew silent again. But now, it was a different kind of silence. It was no longer about fear. It was about mission accomplished. I felt the longing, but also pride. Every child who left took with them values that money cannot buy. There were moments when I was alone again. Just me, the simple house, and my prayers. But I never felt abandoned again. Because I understood something precious. God never takes something away without teaching something alongside it. For many years, I was invisible. To the town, I was just the widow with many children. The woman who always accepted any job. The one who never complained. People looked at me with pity. Some with suspicion. Few with respect. But time has a silent way of revealing the truth. When my children grew up, something changed. They walked with their heads held high. They greeted people firmly. They worked hard and came home tired, but honest. And then, the comments started to change. They were no longer whispers of doubt. They were words of admiration. She raised those children well. They have character. She did what many wouldn't do. I heard it all in silence. Not because I sought recognition, but because I understood that God was answering my promise. Through the behavior of my children. The respect that arrived didn't come quickly. It came with time. It came with consistency. It came with truth. I learned that when you walk with integrity, you don't need to defend yourself. The fruit speaks for you. Today, at 74 years old, I can say something I learned living alone for so long. Faith doesn't eliminate loneliness, but it makes it habitable. There were many days when the house was empty. No voices, no footsteps, no laughter. And I missed all of it. But I never felt that God had abandoned me. The faith that sustained me wasn't made of loud miracles. It was made of small daily certainties. The bread that didn't run out. The strength that appeared in the morning. The peace that came at night, even when I didn't understand everything. I learned that faith isn't about feeling God all the time. It's about trusting even when you feel nothing. I also learned that loneliness can be a place of listening. It was there that I heard my own weaknesses and God's faithfulness. If I had given up on the silent days, I wouldn't have lived to see the harvest days. True faith does not shout. It remains. Today, sitting on the porch, with a tired body and a heart at peace, I look back without regret. I wasn't a strong woman all the time. I was afraid. I cried. I thought about giving up. But I continued. The promise I made to God in that early dawn was not broken. Not because I was perfect, but because He was faithful. My children grew up. They formed their own families. They carry values that no amount of money can buy. I don't leave an inheritance in coins or land. I leave examples. I leave faith. I leave perseverance. If you have made it this far, perhaps you are living in a time where everything feels too heavy. I know what that's like. I've been there. I've lived days when there was no one to help, no money to fix things, no clear answer from heaven. But I learned something over 74 years of living in this hard world. God does not abandon us when everything is lost. He draws closer. Sometimes, He doesn't change the situation. He changes who we become within it. If today you feel like you are weak, tired, or thinking of giving up, do not be ashamed of it. True courage is not never falling. It is getting up every day, even with a tired heart. Keep going, even without understanding, even without seeing results. Because one day, when you look back, you will realize that that pain was not the end of your story. It was the beginning of your strength. I am just an old woman from the Old West, without riches, without fame, but with the certainty that a promise sustained by faith is capable of crossing an entire lifetime. And if God sustained me, He can also sustain you. If this story touched your heart in some way, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel and walk with us. Every week, simple, deep, and true stories to remind us that faith still sustains lives. If you know someone who is struggling in silence, someone who feels alone, tired, or without strength, share this video. Sometimes, a story arrives at exactly the right time. And if you want, leave a comment. You don't need to write much. Sometimes, an "I need prayer" is enough. Here, no one walks alone. I close with what I learned in 74 years of life. When there is no man, when there is no money, when there are no answers, there can still be faith. And that is more than enough to keep going. May God sustain you, just as He sustained me.